Kraigg Brathwaite wears a badge of his grandparents just under his West Indies logo. And I bet his grandparents were incredibly proud of him. But I also bet that they like watching him bat too, because he bats like someone from their generation and not really his. He's on his own path in modern cricket. He once said that if I get 100 singles, it's still 100. And that wasn't said ironically, he meant it, and not just from a mathematical standpoint. In this era where West Indies have turned into T20 stars, Brathwaite turns for one on the leg side again and again and again and again. And because he is so distinct from many other modern players, I really want to know how this came about. So a few years ago, I went looking for Brathwaite's origin story.
This is the last knot. My dad told me to say this.
I wanted to know if he started as a fast bowler, a batter, or a keeper. How did the cricketer in front of me form? And with Brathwaite, it was actually easy to find a lot of footage of him as a kid. He was a superstar from a very young age who made a scary amount of runs in Barbados. And there were clips of him in local news and playing league cricket and interviews with him as a young player, all this different footage. Brathwaite is the same player now he was when he was a young teenager. There's no Azhar Ali or Stuart Broad-like transformation. He wasn't a stylish young player who has reined himself in. At 14, he nudged, nurdled, and outlasted bowlers, and he's still doing it. And it's actually hilarious to see clips of him compared to the other kids in some of those games. They're trying to clear boundaries and give themselves room or, push the scoring and getting out. And he just never played like that. There were no attacking instincts to shave off. He was a single machine from birth. Actually, not from birth. He was 12 when he made a conscious effort to be more like Shivnarine Chandrapal. What kind of a kid thinks about these sort of things, and let alone looks in a mirror and thinks, do you know what I need? More patience and less shots. That is a special kind of kid, and we're seeing that at test level. This Barbados pitch and the last Antigua pitch, obviously they have been very good for batting, but they haven't really been batting paradises. What they've really been is hard to be dismissed on if you're not playing a shot. In Antigua, the only way to be dismissed was if you got a low ball or you were playing an attacking shot. Guess which way Brathwaite went out. And at that stage, it was England's biggest chance of winning. And you felt the same in this test. If they got past Brathwaite, it's a bit more of a shallow batting lineup. They had a chance. The problem is, they didn't get past him. He faced over 400 balls with his major shot as, like, a flick. And we're not talking about a Viv Richards or a Kevin Peterson or a Victor Trumper, like aggressive flick. We're talking about an agreed upon single gently turned to the leg side for one, on repeat. His main attacking shot was the cut, almost exclusively from Jack Leach when the ball was a little bit short or if it spun into his arc a little bit. And he played 23 cuts and scored 45 runs from them. Altogether, he was recorded as having played 23 attacking shots trying to score boundaries from his 489 deliveries. The rest were strike rotation or defensive. And I will leave it to you whether leaves count as shots or not. And in the last 10 years, this was the 6th longest innings in terms of balls faced, or the 4th longest in terms of minutes out there. And all the other innings around him in this list are double or triple hundreds. I don't actually think we make test matches long enough for Brathwaite to make 300 runs in. I mean, forget the monks and the people who throw their phones in the lake on their way to the woods to reconnect with nature. This dude Brathwaite could teach anyone about self-control. And as I said, it's always been this way. For instance, he broke into the Barbados side at 16, which, considering that Barbados is one of the places that has produced more cricketers per capita than probably anywhere else on the world. Consistently now, there's so many Bayesian players in the West Indies team. In fact, he said by the age of 17, he'd already made 40 hundreds in his life. I remember asking England captains Mike Atherton and Nasser Hussain when they were 17 how many hundreds they'd made. They thought they'd made about 15 each. That shows you how many runs he made early. And he was the 3rd youngest West Indian to score a double century in Test cricket. Only Gary Sobers and George Headley, two of the greatest cricketers of all time from anywhere, reached that landmark at a younger age than he did. In 2013-14, he captained the Barbados team to a victory in their regional 4-day competition. He was 21 at the time and far younger than the majority of his side. And he's the only batter in the last decade of Test cricket for the West Indies who's made any runs. Jason Holder is the next best, and he's a mile back on this list. His average is still obviously under 40, and he hasn't gone on to be the champion player that a lot of people hoped. And of course, yeah, he scores slower than a sloth stuck in a tar pit, but he holds together the worst batting lineup in Test cricket regularly by just being there. And currently he has the 13th most runs in the history of West Indies cricket. And there are some names on this list. Just surviving West Indies cricket in the last decade is something special. Bad administration, strikes, problems with the players' union, the whole T20 thing, and most of their best players not even being around, and probably a million other things I haven't thought about. I mean, put it this way, a young Kraigg Brathwaite should have been opening with Chris Gayle and having that player around to help him out for most of his career, and, you know, Gale's just not been there. And not to mention for the second part of Brathwaite's career, when he should have been cashing in, he ran into the pace pandemic. But none of that really matters, because once he gets into the crease, well, he digs in deeper than an Alabama tick. Against Pakistan in the UAE, he was the first opener in Test cricket to be not out in both innings of a match, meaning he was on the field for the entire game. He made 142 not out, 318 balls in the first innings, and 60 not out in the second. But he didn't even demand or try and hit the winning runs. He's the guy at the other end, leaning on his bat. And quite often, his bats look like he's found them under his uncle's bed or in an old kit bag somewhere. So again, here in Barbados, we see Brathwaite slow, you know, in that kind of one-pace drudgery that he often finds himself in. Weirdly, in the last test, he played his fastest ever 50, and people are starting to wonder if he had changed his ways. He had not. In fact, he seems to be on a mission to be the slowest cricketer by bat or ball in the world. His bowling has got slower and slower in this series. His slowest moon ball in this match was 61 kilometers per hour, which for a professional athlete is about as slow as you can physically release the ball. As far as strike rates go, Brathwaite is the second slowest batter of the last decade, just a smidge behind Kaushal Silva. It's actually really hard to score as many runs as Brathwaite does this slowly. Most players use attacking shots to put pressure back on the bowler and upset them, to move the field, to knock the ball in the gaps, to get off strike. All those normal basic things. Because the ability to face ball up to ball, not scoring at all, against test bowlers, even on a flat pitch like this, is just tough. Yet Brathwaite is from another dimension. It doesn't seem to bother him. And even in that other dimension, he still wouldn't be a star. When he was young, his father would tell him, "Take your time, man. Take your time." And whether it be his father or his grandparents or even the old dour players from previous generations, no one seems to respect our elders more than Kraigg Brathwaite. And all of this has given us a bloke who can play over 200 defensive shots in innings like it's a walk in the park. A very slow, careful, well-managed and respectable walk in the park. Brathwaite stays on the path, the same one he has since childhood.